this video is going to discuss a couple of rhetorical situations, purpose and audience. So purpose, we're thinking about why do you write? What's the reason why you are writing this piece? And then for audience, who do you write for? So we'll start with purpose. And when you think about the purpose of writing, you want to think about why are you writing this piece? And yes, it's true that when you are a student, you are writing this piece because most of the time your teacher told you to, or your teacher gave you this assignment. But outside of writing classes, you may still be doing some writing. And so it's important for you to think about why you are writing this piece. And for assignments, you might want to think about why is the teacher asking you to write this piece? What is the purpose behind this assignment? So think about it. Is the reason you're writing to entertain? Are you writing something funny for a magazine? Are you writing a silly text message to cheer your friends up? Are you writing to record history? Maybe you're writing something that you want someone to remember. Are you writing to persuade, to argue, to convince someone to believe something? For example, let's say that a kid wants to convince their parents to let them have a dog. You might have to write something or come up with an argument. Are you writing to explain how to do something? So there's a lot of different reasons why you might write something. You might have more than one purpose why you're writing something. So what are your goals, and how do they define the way that you approach what you have to write? So thinking about purpose, keep some of these questions in mind. What do you want your audience to do, think, or feel after reading your piece? In other words, how do you want your readers to use what you tell them? If you are persuading them to do something, do you want them to take action after they read your piece? Do you want them to go and do something after you finish reading? Do you want them to follow your advice? Do you want them to change the way that they do something? Then second, think about what does your assignment or task ask you to do? So for school, is your teacher asking you to demonstrate knowledge? Are they asking you to show that you have mastered the concept that you've been working on in class? Or do you need to demonstrate to someone that you have learned a new skill? And then third, how can you best achieve your purpose? What's the best way to demonstrate that you have learned this new skill? Or what's the best way to show that you understand the concept that you've been studying? So you might have to use a particular genre. In writing, we have a lot of different styles that we can use. So we talk about writing an essay, but what kind of essay are you writing? Are you writing a profile? Are you writing a reflection? Are you writing a cause-effect style? Are you comparing or contrasting? Are you defining something, describing, narrating, arguing something? There's a lot of different genres that you can use, a lot of different styles of writing, and what would be the best style to help you achieve your purpose? So now that we've discussed purpose, we're going to talk about audience for a moment. And before we move on to a discussion of audience, I want you to take a look at this note. And think about, what does this note mean? What is the purpose of this note? Why was this note written? Please take the chicken out and feed Nova and Stella. Also, made the appointment for Jack for Wednesday. Love, Kate. Take a moment and think about it. Now, I'm guessing you're sitting there very confused. In fact, I'm almost sure that you're sitting there very confused, and I bet you have no idea what this note is asking you to do. And the reason why is because this note is not meant for you. You are not the intended audience for this note. This note is meant for my husband. And all of these things are are relevant, and the way that I've written this note makes sense because of who my audience is. If I give this note to you, it doesn't make any sense because you're not my intended audience. Please take the chicken out. The chicken in the freezer, the chicken in the refrigerator. What chicken? The chicken for dinner. What time do I have to take the chicken out in order for it to be ready for dinner? But what seems like a simple message here, just a couple of sentences, not even complete sentences, is actually very complex because there's compressed information here for a specific audience. The writer is me, and the audience is my husband. So first of all, the tone is important. It's somewhat casual, and also it's somewhat intimate. So the writing itself is casual, incomplete sentences. And then the signing of the note, love Kate, that's very intimate. So I wouldn't sign a note like that to everyone, only a very specific audience. And a lot can be left unsaid because I assume that my audience, my husband, knows a lot of the information already. So when I say take the chicken out, we went grocery shopping this weekend together. I know that he knows it's the chicken in the freezer for the dinner that I want to make that evening. And I know that he'll know when to take the chicken out so that it has thawed by the time we're ready to cook dinner. And when we say feed Nova and Stella, first of all, my husband knows who Nova and Stella are. Those are our dogs. And then I also know when I say feed Nova and Stella, I know that he knows how much to feed them. I know that he knows what time to feed them, where to find the food in our house. All of this information is compressed in this note without me actually needing to say it. And then when I say made the appointment for Jack for Wednesday, this also has a lot of information. I know my husband knows that Jack is one of our sons. I know he understands I mean this Wednesday, not next Wednesday. And also, I know that he knows what the appointment is for. He knows who the doctor is that we're going to see and what we're going to see the doctor for. So, audience actually is really important in writing because that determines a lot of different factors. For example, when you think about who will read what you write, envision your audience. Picture who your audience is, and then consider some of these questions. How much do you need to write? So, for example, when I'm writing the note to my husband, I don't need to write a lot because I know he already understands a lot of the things that I'm referencing in my note. But if I were writing this note for someone else, then I might need to go into some more details. If I were explaining to a neighbor who was going to take care of our dogs, I might need to go into more detail about how to feed them. What tone should I use? Again, since I'm writing this note for my husband, it can be more casual, more informal, and more intimate. What genre is appropriate? Is it a memo, an essay, a note, a speech? And then what information do you need to include? How much do I need to explain things? What information is assumed and what is not? Some additional things to consider with your audience. Know the audience's expectations. Be aware of what they bring with them. What do they already know about you? What do they expect to read from you? And how does that impact what you might write? Know the conventions. So for example, for academic writing, there are a lot of rules, and sometimes these rules are unstated. You might make something that seems obvious to you in your mind. You understand exactly what you're trying to say, but your professor might not have that same assumption. Or you might have to use a certain structure for your essay, and you have to make sure that you follow those rules in the situation that you're writing in. Do you need to explain something, or is it obvious? Something that might be very clear to you might not be clear to someone else. And then think about the level of formality. Just like it's not appropriate to wear pajamas to a job interview, it's not appropriate to use casual or informal language in academic writing. And the reverse is true. Just like you wouldn't wear a business suit or a formal dress to sit around on your couch watching Netflix, you wouldn't use formal language when you're emailing a friend, when you're texting with a family member. So the level of formality also informs how you write. Who are you writing for? That changes the level of formality. And then how well do you know the audience? Do you know the audience very well? Or do you not know them very well? And so let's talk about that in a little bit more detail. Identifying the type of audience. A known audience, in other words, an audience that you know very well, is going to be people with whom you're very familiar, people whose expectations you very clearly understand. So this could be people you know very personally. This could be your family, your friends. This could even be you writing a note to yourself. If you want to remind yourself to do something later, you might write a note for yourself. So for this reason, these kinds of notes will have a lot of shorthand, and they might reference things that only you and the people you're familiar with understand. But a known audience doesn't just have to be people you know. It could also be people that you understand because they come from a similar background as you. Or you have a shared context with those people. So for example, let's say that you're an online gamer and you want to write a piece, you want to review a new video game. So you know that even though you might not know all the people that you're writing for, you know that audience because you share that context with them. Multiple audiences would be basically just when more than one group of people will read your piece. So think about it like this. If you're writing a business memo or a report, you might initially write that report for a supervisor, but then down the line, there may be other people who might also read that report. Other people who work at the company, other employees, your colleagues, maybe potential clients might also read your report. And so when you're writing, you have to not just keep your supervisor in mind as your audience, but what other groups of people might also read your piece of writing, and how will that influence how you write. And then probably the most difficult group, the most difficult audience that you have is the unknown. You don't know what they know already, what they need to know, or how they will react. And so this is very difficult. You might have to write in ways that are new to you, and you might have to kind of analyze your audience a little bit, do some research on them to find out what style or what tone, what length of writing might be appropriate for that group. So whether your audience is known or unknown, here are some things to think about. Of course, who do you want to reach? Exactly who is it that you're writing to or speaking to? Because audience, you can apply this when you're giving a presentation or making a speech. So think about the background. What is your audience as education? What are their life experiences? Do they have a family? What kind of job do they have? Did they go to college? Did they fight in a war? These kinds of things. What experiences are they bringing with them as they read your piece of writing? Then also think about what are their interests? What kinds of things do they like? What motivates them? What do they care about? Are they interested in video games? Are they interested in knitting? Are they interested in family issues? Are they interested in dogs or cats? What are the interests of your audience? Also think about demographic information. Consider whether race, gender, sexual orientation, disabilities, occupation, religious beliefs, economic status, age, and so on. How might those affect what you write? For example, think about different magazines, right? If you're writing for Men's Health magazine or In Style, your readers are going to have very different interests. Political circumstances also can impact how you write. So what attitudes, what opinions, biases, what special interests does your audience bring to the table with them? And that may certainly affect the way that the audience reads your piece. Are your audience readers, are they conservative, liberal? Are they in the middle of the road? Are they young or old? And that may affect their political orientation as well. What does your audience already know? And what do you need to tell them about the topic that you're writing about? What's the best way to do so? So do you think your audience is already very familiar with this topic, or do you think this is a brand new topic to them? Either way, you're going to have to adjust how much you write or how much information you provide them with. Because if your audience already knows a lot about the topic, you don't want to bore them. But if your audience knows nothing about the topic, you have to give them some context or some background information before you move on to the argument that you're making. What's your relationship with the audience? So how does it affect the language and the tone that you use? Do you know them or not? Are you friends, colleagues, mentors? Are you enemies, strangers? Do you think that they're going to share your beliefs? All of that is going to affect the level of formality that you use in addressing readers that you either know very well or that you don't know at all. And you also, even if you know someone well, you might address friends and family very differently than you might address your boss. What are the audience's expectations? What are their needs? Your history professor, for example, might need to know how well you can discuss the economy of the late Middle Ages so that they can assess how much you have learned in their course. They might also expect you to be able to write a well-reasoned argument. They might expect you to demonstrate your critical thinking skills. So that's important to keep in mind when you're thinking about your audience. And then think about, what response do you want? What do you want the audience to do after reading your piece? Do you want them to accept your information, your opinion as a valid opinion? Do you want your professor to accept that you have demonstrated the necessary skills in this assignment? Do you want them to understand you? Do you want them to sympathize with an experience that you've had? What response do you want from your reader? And then how can you best appeal to your audience? What medium is the best to reach them in? Is it best for you to write an essay? Is it best for you to give a speech, to record a video? And then you might also think about design requirements for your audience. For example, elderly readers might need a larger type to be able to read that a little bit better. So that's it for this presentation about audience and purpose. If you'd like more information, this was adapted from a textbook called The Norton Field Guide to Writing, the 4th edition. Thank you for listening to this lecture, and if you have any questions, please let me know.